The Resilience Project is a collective of 35 City of Philadelphia departments joining one another and mobilizing with the goal of solving the dependency crisis in Kensington. The initiative's first and grossly miscalculated order of business was venturing down to the old abandoned Conrail tracks that were constructed below the street level and had become somewhat of a hiding area for the city's substance abuse crisis. The area had become so vile in so many ways that it was widely known that the Philadelphia police wouldn't even go down there. The hazard level of the health crisis that had evolved down there was nothing short of horrific. The area was known in the neighborhood as El Campamento, and the initial hope was to make what had festered into a massive embarrassment for the city of Philadelphia more accessible to outreach. The amount of trash alone that littered the area was absolutely overwhelming. The debacle they found when officials finally descended upon El Campamento, it was unimaginable, starting with people literally living in a sea of garbage and refuse. They found human remains, animal remains, along with thousands and thousands of used rigs. They found that many of its inhabitants were riddled with infectious diseases. And while it seemed on the surface that the intention was good, as I stated earlier, the master plan was grossly miscalculated, and all it really did was shift the encampment up to the street level. As a result, the problem scattered throughout the neighborhood, and people sought shelter at the various underpasses throughout Kensington. Many slept on sidewalks and in parks, and ultimately nothing was fixed. We could take a closer look at Kensington by the numbers and maybe gain a better understanding of just how mind-boggling the severity of this problem really is. These numbers are based off the most recent stats released by the City of Philadelphia and its agencies. In 2020, roughly 150,000 Philadelphians participated in treatment programs funded by the Philadelphia Departments of Behavioral Health, Intellectual Disability Services, and Community Behavioral Health. 31,400 of those individuals partook in dependency services, and 16,000 of them were treated for O use disorder. I'm sure you know what O stands for. Meanwhile, the city's recovery house capacity has as of recently been expanded to 470 slots. In 2016, F was present in 55% of Philadelphia's overdose deaths. In 2020, it was present in a staggering 94%, which is an epic jump in just 4 years. Of those F-related instances, 81% of them were males, while 19% were female. I was unable to find anything on the gender breakdown in the limited amount of available detox and recovery beds, but it would seem to me that that number, whatever it is, could possibly be closely related to the massive gap in the male-to-female ratio that has experienced F-related overdoses. The racial breakdown was 45% white, 38% black, and 15% Hispanic, proving that the issue apparently shows no prejudice and has negatively impacted people of all races. 69% of these incidents have happened inside of a private residence, while nearly 25% happened in the street or in another unspecified location. In 2020, Philadelphia hospitals experienced 6,139 emergency visits related to OODs, 58% of them being between the ages of 25 and 44, and shockingly, 3% were under 15 years old, while 6% were over 65 years old. Now mind you, Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro was quoted by the Philadelphia Inquirer as saying that Kensington was approaching $1 billion enterprise, and that on a single block, sellers can make upwards of $60,000 a day in sales. Now remember, Project Resilience again is the initiative that brought together and mobilized 35 City of Philadelphia departments with the common goal of again combating and eradicating the O crisis in Kensington. In its first year, the failed yet still funded Project Resilience claimed that 180 people were arrested, while $262,000 worth of product and 20 guns were taken off the street. So $60K a day is made in one single block. Now mind you, there are 100 blocks in the area versus $262,000 worth of product seized in a year. Yeah, it sounds pretty ineffective to me. One neighborhood activist who lives across the street from McPherson Park, aka Needle Park, estimates that at any given moment there's about 150 people or so actively using in the park, and roughly 70 to 80 sleeping in front of and on the steps of the McPherson Square Library every night. And understand that that's just one of the numerous encampments that move and get displaced by the participants of the Resilience Project anytime it needs some good press. There were 606 abandoned vehicles that were towed or removed from the problematic areas of Kensington. That's a lot of cars. The vast majority of these vehicles served as shelter for the street people of Kensington. The Resilience Project also lays claim to 376 tons of trash being removed, tens of thousands of needles being picked up and discarded, in addition to the installation of new lights and cameras along the business corridor. Again, entirely ineffective, and the evidence is on full display 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, should you ever venture down Kensington Avenue or any of the Kensington back streets. Ineffective because the quote-unquote help is not geared towards the problem, but more so in the name of aesthetics. And in classic Kensington tradition, the encampments continue to get broken up and shifted around every few weeks, all while the problem continues to grow. I myself subscribe to logic, and while I fully understand that this is by no means an easy mountain to climb by anyone's standards, I am unable to buy into the idea that it is anything less than absolutely inhumane to make excuses and take the attitude that there's nothing that can be done. Look, we can bounce around the victim word all day long. We can have empathy, we can show empathy, we can light up the sidewalks and pick up the trash, we can give them soap and socks, we can give them blankets and hats, but in the end, what purpose does any of it serve if we're just going to leave it as is? What's being accomplished to solve the problem in the long term? The humane approach versus the inhumane approach will always be a topic of conversation. These people need more than just a blanket to get them through the night. They need more than just a meal. They need a one-way ticket back to normalcy. They need to be stripped of the option to fail. They need recovery. For me, the most inhumane thing that any human being can do to another human being is sit back and allow that person to destroy their own life. Every decision made by these afflicted people is a decision rooted in desperation and dependency. It is not made with a sound, fluid, and progressive mindset. Change happens when we stop letting sick people continue to make sick decisions that lead to sickening results. Sometimes change has to be forced. Desperate times call for desperate measures. For those who do take exception to me calling the initiatives a failure, I call it a failure based on the simple and sobering fact that the crisis in Kensington is not improved or improving in any way. I will employ logic and categorically list off the failures in hopes that it will spur a reimagined approach, a fresh set of ideas, and the awareness necessary to stop re-electing the same dummies that have continued to fail when it comes to healing the people, healing the neighborhood, and properly allocating tax dollars to finally effectively combat this problem.